rather less expertly each time. Nevertheless, by the time it arrived in California, shipped from my publishers to whom it had been addressed for forwarding, its contents still appeared to be intact. The cover letter read thusly: Dear Mr. Lescroart, my name is Mikhail Vayev. I hold the position of Chief Historical Research Analyst in the United Soviet Archive Library, Politburo Special Section, PSS 32.1. I am 56 years old and have held my position for 16 years. I was given the job because of my skill with languages. Besides most of the dialects of Russian, I am fluent, or reasonably so, in Mandarin, English, French, German, Dansk, and Urdu, as well as Yiddish and Hebrew. When I was a young graduate historian in Khrushchev's administration, my first assignment was to change the names St. Petersburg, or Petrograd, to Leningrad in every document filed for the years between the onset of World War I and the October Revolution. I must have performed well, though all I remember from that year is sitting in airless and musty misery, staring at the bureaucratic detritus of a long-dead age. In any event, I was promoted and spent the next few years changing Stalingrad to Volgograd and otherwise excising Stalin's name from our history books. Eventually, I purged Khrushchev's name as well, only to go back and reinsert them both under Andropov. In 1970, under Brezhnev, I was appointed chief of my section, PSS 32.1. That promotion gave me access to Western publications, newspapers and magazines, as well as books of fiction and non-fiction. Recently, your novel, Son of Holmes, arrived at the archives. Of course, even here in Russia, Sherlock Holmes is commonly known and widely admired. I myself have harbored a lifelong interest in the great detective. I picked up the book immediately. The argument presented in its introduction, that Sherlock Holmes actually existed and operated in England at the turn of the century, I took to be an amusing conceit. Like most people, I believed that Holmes was a fictional character and nothing more. It wasn't until I turned to Jules Giraud's manuscript itself that I became conscious of a disturbing sense of déjà vu. I was certain I'd seen the names Giraud and Lupa and encountered that writing style before. Over the course of the next few weeks, I figuratively rifled the files of my brain, trying to determine where and when I'd seen similar material. Then, one evening, I remembered. In my first assignment, changing St. Petersburg to Leningrad 34 years ago, I was sure that I had sterilized a file that contained those names. Excitement kept me awake that entire night. The next morning found me in the bowels of the Kremlin, 6 floors below the street. I first checked the catalogs for L and G to no avail, then unsuccessfully tried A for Auguste Lupa. Under J, I came upon something that looked hopeful. I walked to the shelf, and with trembling hands pulled down the dusty folder, Kremlin file number JG 0665, and began examining the documents it contained. A hasty perusal confirmed my initial feeling, but a more careful study would be needed if I were to be sure, so I packed the folder into my briefcase and brought it home that night. As I read, I realized that I had stumbled on the most important discovery of my career, a wealth of material, including Giraud's diaries and prison memoirs, of the events leading up to the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II in 1917. Just as important, perhaps ultimately more so, the file utterly convinced me of the actual historical existence of Sherlock Holmes. After I'd read the material, his role in those events, and that of his son, Lupa, could no longer be seriously denied. Alas, there are certain restrictions in my country that would keep even a find of this importance from being published. The file itself, JG 0665, is still classified. Nevertheless, as an historian, I feel strongly that this story should be told. Accordingly, I am sending you the enclosed in the hopes that it will at least see publication in the West. It will need editing and translating, but those efforts seem minimal indeed compared with the importance of this find.